Number one is speak softly to the storm. Now, what we're talking about is you are the author of a book, and the book is about you. It's all about you. Now, I know that sounds selfish, that sounds narcissistic, but if you write a biography, an autobiography, well, it's about you. So we're not talking about being selfish or narcissistic. We're talking about being personally responsible for ourselves. So it's all about you in that sense, not in a selfish sense. It's all about you. So you're going to write your story. I say going to write your story, I don't know how old you are, but you are in the middle of your book, somewhere in your book. And in the past is your book up to this point. So I've got a question for you, and we're going to address Speak Softly to the Storm in just a moment. But the question is, who has been writing your book up to this point? Have you been the primary author? Now, when you write a book, you have other people involved, right? Now, you may have some co-authors, most of us do, influencers. Some of those co-authors are really good. Like my parents, I had good parents. I had some good teachers, some were jerks. And I had some very bad co-authors. And they would nudge me and push me and muscle their way into my life, sometimes literally, and throw my story off course. Well, starting today, I'm going to purpose to be the primary author of my book. And yeah, we can have these other people in there as co-authors because I think they add a lot to the story. In fact, we actually need them. Now, when we say speak soft to the storm, what we're really saying is as we write our life story, we need to understand that there will be some storms. So we're going to write a story, and in our story, we're captain of a ship, and as the captain of a ship, we're at the helm, and we're sailing across the sea. You know, we've used this analogy in past presentations. But in that story, we need to keep a cool head. We need to keep strong control over our impulses. We can't be afraid. We can't be terrified. We can't be overconfident. We need to face the storm and speak softly to it. So a storm comes in your life and you say, hello storm, how are you today? So there's somebody maybe at work who's a real jerk. And if you are a person with autism, I guarantee you have that problem. Or you've had it in past chapters of your book, and chances are you're going to have it in future chapters of your book. So that storm comes along, and how do you deal with it? You speak softly to it. I got a neighbor who's a jerk. I've got a coworker who's a jerk. There's this guy at school who's a jerk. Hi, jerk. How are you today? Speak softly to the storm. You are in control. You're the captain of the ship. In your book, you are the captain of the ship. Nobody else. You have co-captains. You have hands on deck. You have workers that are helping you. But ultimately, you are the author. Number two is use diversion to determine your destiny. Okay, so you're writing your book, and in your book you're the captain of the ship, and along comes a storm. What are you going to do? You're going to adjust your sails so you can take advantage of that disadvantage. Now, sometimes the best thing to do for a storm, when you encounter a storm, is to steer clear of it. Okay, maybe in your book you're not the captain of a ship. Maybe you're the pilot of a jet airplane, you got passengers on board, you know, your friends, your family, whatever, and you don't want to fly them through the storm, you don't want to go through the storm yourself, you know. So you just steer clear of it, you just go around it. And a lot of us, that just kind of damages our ego. To me, it would be more damaging to my ego to fly or to sail head first into a tornado. That would say, this guy's kind of stupid. You know, that would really damage my ego. But the fact that you had the discretion to go around the storm speaks highly of your integrity and your intelligence. So we're talking about fight or flight, whichever you want to say. Sometimes you want to flee. You don't want to fight the storm. You don't want to fight the tornado. You want to get out of harm's way, right? Sometimes you have people in your life and they bring a tornado. Best thing to do is get out of the way. There was a Stoic philosopher by the name of Marcus Aurelius, and he said, quote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice," end quote. So you have a guy in your life, and, okay, you got a lot of people in your life who are, what was that term I used earlier? Jerks. I could use more colorful terminology, but I want to keep these videos G-rated. So you've got this jerk in your life, or group of jerks in your life, and sometimes you need to stand up to them. We've done videos on that. The last video I did, I think, was the 2 words, you know. They weren't drop dead. The 2 words were grow up. Sometimes you need to confront the storm, and sometimes, just get away from it. And sometimes you literally need to walk away from some people. Now we're talking about relationships here. So use diversion to determine your destiny. So in your book, as the pilot of the ship, you know, you're writing this book and you're sailing the ship, and you see a storm coming, and how are you going to write that chapter when you get to it? Well, what I do is, it depends on the storm. Sometimes you use the wind to set your sails and move you forward, and sometimes you say, this is the type of storm that is not going to help, so I'm going to divert my way around it. So some people you just walk away from. When you have a narcissist in your life, somebody who is psychopathic, why waste your time trying to outsmart these people? You got better things to do, you know? You got a destination to get to. So you just go around them. And again, it's not a matter of ego that you sail into the eye of the tornado. It's a matter of common sense that you walk away from certain people. Number 3 is do this. In your book, when you're writing your book and you're the captain, remember, never relinquish the helm. You're the captain. Again, you got co-writers. You got hands on deck. I wrote a book a few years ago. It's been about over 20 years ago now, but it sold very well. This is when Amazon was just coming into its own, and we sold like 20-some thousand copies. And I had to get some help. Now, I wrote every single word of that book. Every thought was mine. But I had 2 editors. I hired 2 editors because I knew that 1 editor was not enough. Because 1 editor would miss something, and chances are the second editor would catch what the first editor missed, and vice versa. And, in fact, they did. If I had 3 editors or 10 editors, chances are it would have been perfect. 2's enough. So, yeah, I authored my own book, but I had help with editing, and I had help with printing. I didn't run the printing press myself. I hired a book printing company. I hired a distributor, and the distributor received a commission, a percentage of sales to distribute my book for me. Most of my books were sold on Amazon and other online outlets, and back then Amazon was primarily book selling. That's all they did back then. They were just starting to sell other stuff, and we sold thousands of books. In fact, you can still find it if you look for it. Somebody else is selling used copies of my book. But the point of all of that is you're going to have other people helping you author your book. And that's perfectly okay, particularly when you get older in life and you can't do things yourself and maybe your mind is not as clear as it once was. Yes, you're going to have more people involved in the authorship of your book, not just in the printing or editing, and that's perfectly okay. But in the meantime, in your book, you're the captain, and no one else is. And you have to think about these other characters in your book. These hands on deck, what are their responsibilities? What are you going to allow them to do as you author your book? Make sure those characters in your book are characters and not jerks, not controllers. They may go after the helm because they think they know better than you do. Well, you can take advice from them. That's perfectly okay. In fact, it's even encouraged. But in the end, remember, this is an autobiography. It's all about you in a responsible sense. It's not about them. When someone takes the helm of your life, it's their book. It's no longer about you. It's about them. They can write their own biography. Leave them alone. Let them do it. So never relinquish the helm. Number 4 is, as you're writing your book, you know, you're the captain of the ship in this book, adjust your sails with foresight. By that I mean, and this we talked about this in other videos, so we're not going to belabor this, but before you initiate a relationship with another person, which if you have autism, that's often challenging enough in itself. But evaluate before initiating that relationship. That is so easy to say and so difficult to do. I have had some very bad experiences in my life because as a person with autism, I was not competent. And it's not just a problem with autism, but as a person with autism in my life, I found it very challenging to be able to determine the true character of other people, particularly when they're masking. And I don't think that's just an autistic problem. I think most everyone has that difficulty. And when I have encountered people who say they're really good at reading other people, usually they're not. When someone says, oh, I'm really good at reading other people, used car salesmen love people like that because they know how to buffalo them. They know how to manipulate them because they think they know all that. We don't know all that. So the point of all that is we need to evaluate before initiating relationships. And as people with autism, we need to put extra effort in that. And the same thing is true, and I've learned this the hard way, in terminating relationships. I have walked away out of frustration, you know, because I'm autistic. I have these meltdowns. I wish I would have had the foresight to stop and think before I walked away. I'm not going to talk about this in detail because I have in the past, but there have been some very special people in my life. And just out of frustration, misunderstanding, I walked away. So adjust your sails, got to, but do it with foresight, because if you don't adjust your sails right, you're going to wreck your ship, or you're going to get blown off course. And man, have I gotten blown off course. So I'm writing my book. I'm the captain of the ship. You're doing the same thing. And one thing we're doing as we write our book is we purpose going forward. In my book, I'm going to be that captain, you know, who gives foresight to adjusting his sails whenever possible. Then number 5 is reevaluate your past relationships. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm stopping and I'm thinking about those past relationships and how I really screwed up with some of them. Number 6 is explain yourself with discretion. Now, it's hard, particularly if you have autism. It's hard, maybe even unwise, to go through life without explaining yourself. Now, I know some people who are autistic have Asperger syndrome, as they used to call it, high-functioning autism on the spectrum, whatever term you want to use. And they prefer not to explain themselves. They prefer, it's easier for them to go through life masking. I'm perfectly okay with that, and I hope you are too. If that works for them, why would I want to change that? It just doesn't happen to work for me. I need to explain myself, but I've learned as I have written my book in the past, when I didn't include that part in the story, someone else took over the helm. Someone else took over the authorship of my book. And I had to struggle to take it back because somebody else was writing my story for me. The principle is this. If you tell one person anything, doesn't matter what it is, if you tell one person anything, you've just told the whole world. So you tell somebody something in confidence, and I used to do that. I'd speak to somebody and say, now I'm telling you this in confidence. I thought I was, but I wasn't. I mean, even the most trusted friend has a trusted friend who has a trusted friend who has a trusted friend. And before you know it, one of those trusted friends is not a trusted friend, and the whole world knows what you told your trusted friend. So telling somebody in confidence is not a thing. You tell one person, I don't care how near and dear they are to you, let me tell one of the person. Once you let it out, it's out. it's out. The whole world assume that the whole world knows it. So, gotta use discretion. It's perfectly okay, I believe, to tell people that I am autistic. I'm on the spectrum. And I understand when I say that the whole world's going to know it. And I'm okay with that because I actually want them to know so they will understand why I act a little quirky. That there is a rational reason for my oddness or my weirdness. So going forward, as I write my book, I'm going to explain in some details with discretion why I'm steering my ship the way that I'm steering it, or why my ship is the way that it is. Number 7 is choose empathy and understanding, and I use the word choose because as people with autism, empathy, as I've explained in other videos, is not our strong strength. Now, I do believe people with autism do have empathy, though we understand people's emotions, maybe not their physiological expressions, but their emotions, particularly if they are in the same boat that we are in. There's that ship analogy again. But we have walked in their shoes, and personally, I have tremendous empathy for people who are lonely. When I see people who are being rejected, my heart goes out to those people. I have empathy for them. I have understanding. Maybe you don't have that. And if you don't, that's just you. You're a little bit different. But in my book, as I write my book, I'm going to be a person who has empathy and understanding. And I'm going to choose it because other than people who are, lonely and rejected, there are other people who deserve my empathy, and naturally, I don't have it. So I'm going to choose to do it on purpose, even though it's not my nature. Number 8, comparing myself to others. Why would anybody waste their time doing that? I'm going to compare myself, to myself. I'm going to improve myself. You know what I did today? I'm 70 years old and I ran 4.5 miles. I've never done that before in my life. Now, when I say run, we're talking 15 minutes a mile. Okay, so I was jogging. Okay, I was trotting, but the point of the matter is, I've never done that before in my life. Went further today than ever before, and I'm comparing myself to myself. There are other people who could run those 4.5 miles much faster, and they can do it much older. I'm not going to compare myself to those people because I will always be a failure. Now stop and think about that for a moment. When you compare yourself to others, we will always be a failure and we will always be a success, because there are some people who don't have feet and they can't run 4.5 miles. So yeah, compared to them, I'm a success. There are other people who could run 40 miles. Why would they want to? I don't know, but they say that natives, the Indians in South and Central America, that was part of their culture, was running long distances. That was their primary mode of transportation, was their own feet. And they did what we do when we get on the interstate. We put the pedal to the metal. And we keep our eye out for what we used to call smoky back in the 70s, with the radar and the CB radios. But we're keeping our eye out for sonar to be pulled over. Go as fast as we can. And that's what they would do, only they would do it with their feet. They'd run, they just, why dilly-dally around when you can run? Get there quicker. That's what they did. So when running, I can't compare myself to other people because, I can be a success compared to a guy who doesn't have feet. But compared to a lot of other 70 years old, they could outrun me in a heartbeat, sometimes literally in a heartbeat. So to compare ourselves to others in another sense is we start becoming like them. I'm not sure I want to do that. I like being me, and I can learn from other people, and I can learn from their techniques and their strategies, but I don't want to compare myself to them lest I become them. I'm going to compare myself to me so I can be the best me that I can be. It's my autobiography. Why would I want to write an autobiography about this other person, which effectively is what I'm doing if I'm comparing myself to others? So there is a measure, there is a rule that I go by, and that is to be the best that I can be because I am responsible for me. Again, it's not selfish, it's not narcissism, it's responsibility, self-responsible. Number 9 is embrace your failures. We've talked about this a lot, but embrace your failures as life lessons. It drives me crazy when I think about all the stupid things I've done in my life, usually relationship things. How I talk to people, how I treated people, the dumb things that I would do, but you know what? That's going to make the rest of my book a little bit better. Because as I look at the past chapters of my book, and by the way, once you write it, you can't unwrite it. Once you live it, you can't unlive it. It's part of history. It is there. It's not going away. But the future, you can change, right? So the future will someday be your past, so you're changing your future past by changing your future. So you're changing the past by changing your future, but not the past past, the future past. Does that make sense? I think it makes perfect sense. So in my book, I'm going to lean into those past mistakes, which are embarrassing and are shameful, and I can't believe I did that. But I'm going to make sure I don't do it again. So the last half of my book, okay, I'm 70, so it's probably a little bit less than half. I'm going to make an attempt in the storyline that those same mistakes aren't going to be there. If you got something out of this video, I really hope you did. Would you consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't already? And if you think this video deserves a thumbs up, give it a thumbs up. Think it deserves a thumbs down? Okay, give it a thumbs down. Leave a comment if you got something to add, and if you would be so kind as to share this on social media, because this is a small channel and we need help growing. So your help in sharing it would be appreciated, and we do appreciate you being here more than you know.